I learned yoga from my father, who is Indian, when I was 4 years old. We have completely different lives. The hustle, it's all about just more productivity, more output. You need to really tune into what is good for you.
I believe the onus should be shared by the team members as well. Until unless you don't come out, you don't take that initiative, the company can make things available to you.
If you're the only person to say no, I'm going to that yoga class or I'm going to that sound bath class that has been put on for me, for all of us, then be that one person.
People as young as 25 or 20 are finding issues, witnessing problems where they're forgetting things. Their memory levels are reducing.
Memory is a very complex thing, and one reason why we are forgetting things, or why even younger people are forgetting so much, is again our environment.
In the midst of movement and chaos, keep stillness inside of you. That's what Deepak Chopra said in one of his talks. And today we are going to be discussing about stillness. And it's a topic which I believe is the key to finding healing. But most of us, with the chaos that urbanization has brought into our lives, have forgotten it in the whole realm of finding success or the race we are in. And who better than Basanti to share us and help us navigate our way to stillness? So, Basanti, welcome to the show. And I'm really, really, honored to have you second time on We Are Listening.
Thank you very much for having me. No, I'm really pleased to be back and to chat all things meditation with you.
Yes. I have been, as I shared with you, I have started my yoga practice and it's been nearly 2 months. Now, at the onset of things, I was finding myself, a little anxious or not very calm while doing Nadi Shodhan pranayama. And I started, so the teacher asked me to do 10 minutes Nadi Shodhan at the end of every session. The day I started, I was doing 30 breaths as part of that in 10 minutes. And over a period of nearly 2 weeks, it has come down to 18 breaths. And the way I feel calmness within me now, uh, I'm seeing a difference in me, the change coming in me, a lot of things which I used to be very, you know, reactive to. I'm able to respond. I'm able to take a step back and not get into fights. So I'm not sure if that's stillness. What are your thoughts?
For sure. I think one thing I would say is that we often separate the mind and the body, or the brain and the body, while everything is part of each other. And of course, we can talk about mind and how we're connected to something much bigger than us, and we can tap into something that is much bigger than us. But I think when we're practicing something such as Nadi Shodhan, so something that is really working on the level of the soma, we're immediately, so everything that's not the conscious mind, we're immediately affecting what is going on in the conscious mind as well. So with these breaths, and for those who don't know, maybe I should quickly introduce myself as well, for those who haven't
Good.
seen the last
Good.
podcast.
I was just going to ask you for the description.
My name is Bassanti, co-founder and CEO of Neuroveda by Pathak Yoga. And we've basically been, for the past 10 years, providing corporate well-being services and neuroscience informed programs to the, London and now beyond. So we're now a global company with clients around the world. But I learned yoga from my father, who is Indian, when I was 4 years old, and studied in Delhi at the International Foundation for Natural Health and Yoga, also at Harvard, Clark, Bonn University, so other things beyond yoga. And that is where that unique blend that I've got is coming in, that tradition, but also the science, and and lots of different jobs in different industries before my sister and I started this company. And I think that is important to see, sort of to keep the bigger picture and not get bogged down by just one little thing that you are doing. So that's what I'm trying to do. And I think in a corporate environment, or just in today's world, because we don't live the way that the ancient yogis used to live, we have completely different lives, like you were saying about the hustle. It's all about just more productivity, more output. We need to revert to all of these things that we had before, now more so than ever, because our minds and our brains have changed drastically, and they need the things that have grounded us back then even more than they did then. So when you're practicing something such as Nadi Shodhan, which is called it's essentially it means cleansing your energy channels. So your nadis are your energy channels, and I'm not explaining for you, you will know all of this. And what we do is we breathe in through one nostril, out through the other nostril. And sometimes this is also called anulom vilom, which is more sort of describing what you're doing. Anulom vilom, alternate nostril breathing. So in through one, out through the other, in the other. You can combine that with a breath hold at the top. That is called the antar kumbhak. So when you're breathing in, then kumbhak is the breath hold. You can have one after you've inhaled and one after you've exhaled. And it obviously makes complete sense. Everyone knows that each breath has 4 parts: the inhale, the little pause that we're making, even if we're not thinking we're holding, then the exhale, and then another pause that we're making. So we're essentially manipulating the breath, and Nadi Shodhan is a part of pranayama, that part of yoga that is all about that breath manipulation, so that we're harnessing our pran, our energy. And pran is not just the breath, but because the breath is so important, it is sometimes almost reduced to just the breath, when pran can be everything that gives us energy. For example, the food that we eat as well. So when we're practicing this, we're essentially immediately changing the chemistry of the body through breathing in and out in a certain way that calms our body, that sparks parasympathetic activity, our rest and digest system, through engaging the vagus nerve, our longest cranial nerve, and which will then, the body sending messages to the brain to say, well, I'm fine because look at my breath. And then the brain hears that and says, okay, all right, then I'll stop producing these stress hormones and I'll induce that calm chemistry for you. And that's essentially what's happening. And while we can say that this is a completely physical thing, and that is what I say in my sessions with corporates as well, especially those typical type A personalities that may not oscillate towards something that they would consider spiritual, it is very much connected to what is going on in the brain. So we need to take the body in a very holistic way. And then when we widen that, and so it's Mental Health Awareness Week next week. I don't know when this podcast is being shown, but May is the Mental Health Awareness month. And this year's theme is all about community. And when we're looking at what we are just part of something much, much bigger. We are part of a community, we are part of a network, we are part of a family, we are part of this world, this universe. So you can widen this again and again and again. And this is what it's all about, seeing yourself as something that is much bigger than just your little body, and seeing your physical body as part of something that affects the mind, and the mind not as something that is, I mean, we want to have tangible things. We can hold on to our body, which is why we think the body is tangible, but it isn't. We're just energy. And this energy that we're harnessing is essentially all that yoga is about. And it's about opening yourself up to something that is bigger. So that union with everything around you.
Amazing, amazing. If I'm not wrong, Nadi Shodhan pranayam is broken down into Chandra Bhedi and Surya Bhedi pranayam as well. So if you can just elaborate on what exactly is Chandra Bhedi and Surya Bhedi for the
Yeah,
listeners.
yeah, that will be very interesting for listeners, I think. So Chandra is the moon and Surya is the sun. And we basically have, and I'll take it to the scientific realm again as well. So we're calling our left nostril our Chandra Nadi, because it is the one that actually holds a little bit less electrical activity. So there's more electrical activity going through the right nostril, which is why it's the Surya, because the sun is obviously bringing the heat. So the sun in yoga would be associated with the sympathetic nervous system, which is often associated with stress, but it's not like that. We in the morning, our body produces certain stress hormones because we need to get up in the morning. We were just talking before we started recording about how I'm not a morning person. So some people, they get up, they wake up, and they're on and they're ready to face the day. Other people need a little bit longer. And that all has to do with those certain hormones that are sometimes considered stress hormones, but are essentially just like there for us to give us energy. And that is essentially what stress is about as well. So when we're talking about the sympathetic nervous system, it is also associated with focus, with action, and taking this into the realm of Chinese medicine and that idea of yin and yang, for example, it is the same. So yang would be that sympathetic nervous system, that focus, that energy, and yin is when we're slowing it down, when we're calming, when we're going from that really fast car, when we're stepping out of that Ferrari, Pagani, whatever, and we're starting to walk, or we're finding a bench and we're sitting on that bench and we're just looking at the beautiful scenery around us. That is what that parasympathetic nervous system does. That is what Chandra Nadi is connected to. And we need those two in a perfect equilibrium, which is what Nadi Shodhan Anulom Vilom does. So it gets us into that equilibrium, and scientifically speaking, it lets your nasal breathing cycle go back to what it's supposed to be if it doesn't. So we have this cycle of breathing where one nostril is always more dominant for around about 90 minutes, and then automatically it changes back to the other nostril. And if that's not the case, and your left nostril is more dominant, then that can be a sign of chronic fatigue, for example. And of course, these things can be sparked by allergies or colds or things like that. But it can also be a sign of, if your right nostril is constantly more dominant, that you may suffer from chronic stress. So this is a little bit about the Chandra and Surya and how that works in our body. And we have many more. We have these nadis, and we have so in the same way as people talk about the main chakras of the body, there are many more chakras. There are mama points. There is where nerves, where everything comes together, where more energy comes together, and those we need to protect, and we need to make sure that it flows. And that's the same in Chinese medicine essentially as well.
Well, just one last follow-up question on, Nadi Shodhan. It is often asked to end Nadi Shodhan pranayam with the left nostril. What's the scientific reason behind that?
I haven't thought about that actually, but yeah, that's a good question. I think, I mean, you're essentially when you're starting, you're closing off your eye. I mean, actually, what you do beforehand is you make sure that you're preparing yourself properly for Nadi Shodhan, which is why you were told do this at the end. So it was probably also that you were doing Kapalbhati beforehand, maybe at the beginning. So I would. Well, I suppose it's because that is the calming bit, right? Because we're essentially we're ending on, just as we're breathing out first when we're starting Surya Namaskar, we
Mhm.
then in and raise the arms, but the exhale comes first. So we're preparing the body for what's to come. And Anulom Vilom Nadi Shodhan is the closing off of this. It's the end of your practice. And that's why you're going down, pushing yourself down and giving yourself probably Shavasana before you go on with your day.
Understood. Understood. Amazing. Basantini, help me understand one thing now, and I would be very specific to specific demographics out there, the creative people.
Mhm.
With the hustle bustle that's being glorified in the world today, creativity requires that stillness and calmness of mind. It cannot be a stressed mind cannot be creative. So how do we, link creativity with yoga, meditation, or pranayama out there?
Um, Yeah, first, that is a very good point. People always think that in today's world in particular, we always need to do things in order to be productive. And that's what I always say to my clients as well. It's sometimes doing less makes you more productive, and taking a step back makes you more productive. And we know that as well in terms of creativity. Sometimes the best ideas come to people when they've been in the shower, when they've been on the walk, when they've done things that are completely would be considered the things that you won't take time out for if you're very stressed. And I think, and I don't know scientifically that that has its reason, because we're engaging a completely different part of the brain. But one thing I want to say is when so the hustle bustle, and I mentioned the word hustle earlier as well. I think what we're doing wrong in today's world is that we're focusing more on how we are being perceived by people around us, and especially in an office environment. I mean, there's obviously now more working from home, but it's also coming back into the office. And if you're there with colleagues, very often it's more about being seen to be doing things rather than actually doing things. And I just find that really Just very, very exhausting, for me to see, but also for everyone to go through, because you will adjust to what is going on around you. And if you're coming new into a company, if you're a new employee, very often that is also what happens. You will adjust because you just think, well, I must fit in, I must make the right impression. And that is not the way forward, because that doesn't lead to creativity. And yes, creative, if we're talking about I used to be a scriptwriter for film and television. If you're talking about actual creative arts, the arts, that is one thing. But I feel that every job involves creativity, which is why employers also want a very diverse team and not people that just come from one particular part of an industry. Um, because that leads people to think differently. They just have very different experiences, and that leads to creativity. But it shouldn't be about presenteeism. It shouldn't be about being there just for the sake of being there, because you're not going to have the output that you want. And the expectation should not be that you're constantly available, because that also leads you to constantly be on, to be in a certain part of the brain, that switched on part of the brain, your prefrontal cortex being very active, when actually you should take yourself back, do some daydreaming. And there is a side to it. So there is something in the brain called a network in the brain called the default mode network, in which we spend, and that is why it's called the default mode network, in which we spend almost half of our time. It's often associated with ruminating and self-obsessed thoughts, and that is the case, very much so. But it's also a part of the brain where you're just daydreaming. And when it's not that rumination that we're going into, and you're less likely to do that if you've worked straight for 2 hours and you've got deadlines and you're just typing away or whatever it is you're doing, and you're then taking a break for 10 minutes, 30 minutes. And you're spending time in that default mode network. How does that look? Like I said, go for a walk with your dog, just sit and daydream or meditate. Then you are less likely to let these thoughts come in that say, why am I so bad at this? Why haven't I achieved more? Because you're already in that state of like, you have achieved things. You've worked very, very hard for 2 hours. When you're then taking yourself back, you're just letting things drip, just like coffee drips through its filter. That is what happens. And then you're very likely to come up with even better ideas, because far-flung regions of the brain are going to work together to create these new ideas. So give yourself that time, whether you are a creative, whether you see yourself as a creative person or not, because I fully believe we are all creative beings. That is where we're starting off. And people people then tell you creativity means being good at being creative. The output, again, it's all about like, what have you created? Is this worth showing in a gallery? It's not about that. We are all creative. We should really tune back into what we used to do as children, and then we'll be much better off.
I totally, echo with what you just shared because when I go back to my developer days when I was working with Fidelity International out there, creativity was not just about me doing what I do today as a content strategist. So bringing out that creative content.
Mm.
Creativity to me at that time was finding the easiest route to write those lines of code or navigate that automation test case out there with the easiest outcome or the easiest, the shortest timeline. And
Mhm.
if I was fresh, I had a very calm mind. I was getting the work done faster. I was able to have my thoughts being processed in a much more effective manner. Now, one of the major things I believe a lot of corporate people, struggle with at the end of the day is they've got timelines. They have got the, pressure coming in from the managers, the management, and all those things. They are so saturated in their mindset and still they are struggling to work. They're trying and striving to get that output happen. What would you, recommend to those executives who are always on their toes, getting ready to get the things done? How can different pranayam or meditation help them achieve their timelines with reduced stress and increased effectiveness out there?
Yeah, I mean, it is very much about working intelligently and not working more, like I said earlier. And I gave a lot of different examples and not just meditation, because I think it's important for everyone who's listening as well. Because I don't know if people have tried meditation and they might feel that meditation isn't for them because they've tried different ones. meditation can be so many different things. Sometimes I describe it as a concentration, but with the caveat that it can also not be. So transcendental meditation, for example, is emphatically not a concentration on something. You're just letting the mind drift, and you've got a mantra that you keep returning to. But if it helps you to do breathing exercises, whether you want to call them pranayama or whether it's from a different tradition, breath work is in everyone's mouth these days, and breath work combines. I find it a bit sad that we're calling it breath work because there are all of these different traditions, pranayama, qigong, etc. Sudarshan Kriya is another one, very similar to Wim Hof, not quite the same. Whatever helps you, whether that is breathing, which is an immediate, wonderful way to get you from very stressed to calm, or whether it is a meditation that speaks to you. If you've tried certain meditations and you then think meditation isn't for you, try others. And it really helps to have someone to guide you through these, to have a teacher to find those meditations for you, who can assess who you are, what sort of personality you are. Do you have a very busy mind? We all have busy minds, but some more than others. That really helps. But it's more about a mindset shift. And that starts not with the individual, unfortunately. It starts with the whole of the corporate world. And in a particular company, it'll be the managers, it'll be the leaders who will have to effect that change. So if you're working in an environment, whether that's a job like yours or whether it's a very creative job. I remember working in an advertising agency and back in the day, and maybe that has changed because that was now a long time ago, but it was very common, to take time off and just go off somewhere to be creative. But essentially, you were on holiday for a couple of days um, because it was accepted that that would spark your creative juices. And that is true, it does. So it was a tried and tested method that at that point maybe wasn't scientifically proven. Now it is scientifically proven, and yet employers are still too hesitant to implement these right changes because I understand as well. I also have my own company. If I employ 20 people, which I don't, but if I employed 20 people, I would want to make sure that my investment in them was, that there was a return on investment. And for an employer who employs 200 people, you lose a bit of oversight. And that is where it's coming, that is where they are like, no, I want them in the office. I want them there 8 hours a day. Whereas they get much more out of their employees if they realize, okay. And someone like me has to come in, maybe. It doesn't have to be me, but someone who assesses, they seem to be most creative between 11 and 1 a.m., 11 a.m., 1 p.m. And after that, there's that drift, that dip. They've had their lunch, they need a little break. So why not give them that break? Why not give them a 2-hour lunch break? And then they come back and they are refreshed and they have that second creativity boost. So I worked like I said, I worked for film and television. When you work on a film, it's for me at least, it was mostly just me writing. But I also worked for a television series where I was in a writer's room with many different people, and we plotted. So we sat around the room every day, 4 days a week. On the fifth day, we all went off and we worked from home and we wrote an episode. Um, for that series, but we plotted, and it was many people in one room. And it's interesting because everyone had different times when we were taking ourselves back and listening rather than talking. And that is great in a group because you have that option to just listen and be in your default mode network rather than completely switched on. You have that time to be switched on when you're coming with an idea, and that works great in a group. So that's a way that when you're in a creative environment and you're floating ideas around, can be really, really amazing as in teamwork. But if it's you just on your own, which is like a job that I'm assuming you had, where you were creative on your own, you need to really tune into what is good for you, what you need to do for yourself, and then have the right employer who says to you, yeah, take an hour out of your work day to do something that doesn't hijack your logical thinking mind, because that is what happens when you get stressed. You're not in a position to be creative at all. So then you need to get yourself back into that really nice, immediate stress is wonderful, long-term stress isn't. So you need to be in a place where you can be very relaxed. And certain meditations are, will and that's anecdotal evidence, are great for creativity. Certain other meditations will be for you as well because everyone is so different. But yeah, you want to focus on slowing down from stressed to calm. You want to think about being efficient and productive rather than constantly feeling the need to churn out more and more and more, because that doesn't mean it's any good. And yeah, but without citing a particular study, um, it needs to be a good, it needs to be like waves of the ocean. You need to spend time up there on the wave, because when something comes up, it will come down, right? It's that up and down. So you're going into stress and productivity, then you're going down again into your default mode network, or you go and have a nap, or you sleep, and then you're going back up again. And that is how it works. Just like we were saying with Nadi Shodhan, everything needs to be in equilibrium. And that is what it is with work as well. So if you're spending 8 hours of your day, or 10 hours of your day, or 12 hours of your day, you shouldn't. But if you do that, spending it at your desk, don't spend it thinking, I need to be efficient all of these 12 hours of my day. You're not going to be anyway. And sometimes it's the decision to meditate, the decision to go for a walk, the decision to daydream that is much, much more effective for you than it is to just let yourself drift off into it, but not knowing, and then giving yourself a hard time. Because then within that default mode network, you get the thoughts of, I haven't done anything for the last 5 minutes, and then you're giving yourself a hard time. And that is very, very unhelpful, as we all know.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a lot of thoughts to the response that you just shared, because managing a company with 20, 10, or 200 employees, it's a highly subjective thing out there. And I believe it's not just the employer. The employee also needs to be equally responsible. Being in the corporate wellness space, and we have one of our next speakers where we are going to be discussing about company work culture and corporate wellness. Uh, we did a lot of wellness activities at different corporates, across the length and breadth of India. One of the major issues the HRs used to face was the participation from the teams. Now, these were fun activities, these were wellness activities. They are being organized for you. And
Yeah.
the company is officially giving you time off to attend those activities. And you're still refraining or resisting from attending those activities. So, somewhere or the other, I believe corporate wellness, though a lot of times the onus is put on the management, the company owners or the director board, the management board. But somewhere or the other, over the journey, I believe the onus should be shared by the team members as well, the employee as well. It until unless you don't come out, you don't take that initiative, the company can make things available to you. You have to go out and avail them.
Yes and no. I think that it is a double-edged sword.
I agree. I totally agree on that.
I mean, I think you're raising a valid point, right? It is very much about owning your own well-being and making the right decisions, and not getting caught up in a certain company culture or getting caught up in groupthink, right? If you're the only person to say, no, I'm going to that yoga class, or I'm going to that sound bath class that has been put on for me, for all of us, um, then be that one person. And maybe that will spark other people to say, okay, next time I'm going to go as well because this person went. But it also depends on how this person is seen in the company. Are they being seen as lazy? Are they being seen as a hard worker? Are they being seen as someone who's new and doesn't really know yet that actually this thing has been put on, but it's a tick box exercise and no one actually is even asked to go? So it's very, very complex, because also the bigger the company, and that is my experience. So I love working with small companies where I'm immediately liaising with the CEO who cares about their employees' well-being and actually says, I'm doing that not in your lunch break. I'm hiring your company to come at 11 a.m. and we're doing something 11 to 11:45 because that is actual company time. That's not the lunch break. It's
Yep.
not a substitute for you going out and getting your lunch, which, by the way, most people don't do in a company, right? It's horrendous, but that's the way it is. And if your company is bigger, it's more likely to have been put on because you've got a massive well-being budget. So it's being money is being thrown left, right, and center, but money is being thrown at the problem in the same way as if you have a nice Victorian house and it looks beautiful, but it needs like an absolute, or you have since we're talking about creativity, you have a script, a screenplay that is terrible and it needs a page one rewrite, but the director is asking you not to change too much, just do a little polish, some typos here, some better dialogue there, and things that'll solve the problem, but it doesn't. So if a house is not, if the structure doesn't stand and if there's damp, it doesn't help that you're painting over it. You need to do something else. And I think that is the problem with certain companies that are too big. No one has the responsibility. If a company is smaller, there is a certain responsibility on every single person because they know why they are there and they know this is my area. And the bigger the company, the less accountability there is. But people don't want to lose their jobs. So at the same time, someone in a big team will be like, no, I can't go to this because I need to be seen to be doing things. I can't go there because people are going to judge me. And if the employer, if the manager of the team doesn't go, then no one in the team is going to go, very likely. If the leader doesn't push it, if the CEO, if executive level don't push these initiatives and are seen to be going there, then no one is actually going to think that they actually support it. So it is very, very complex. And yes, the individual needs to be able to say, I am taking care of my well-being. I am responsible for my own well-being. But if the company is going this way and the individual is going that way, then the individual, sometimes rightly so, will fear for their job. And there is many, without mentioning companies at all, of course, there is many companies where individuals are being told, oh, you should let go of this employee because they're not going to reflect well on your career, and that employee maybe had burnout or took time off because they were ill for something else. And that is the reality of the corporate world, which is why it is so important to change, not just have these services that a company like mine offers, but to have programs that we've now rolled out where we're really trying to change what is going on in a company. So change how teams work. For example, saying to, assessing a team and saying, this is when they're creative, this is when they should be working, this is when you should give them some time off. And that is just one example, right? Sometimes these problems start with management and they don't start within a team. Sometimes it's one particular team member, sometimes it's many team members. Sometimes it's that they don't get up enough because they do have these physical problems. But very often these physical musculoskeletal issues are sparked by stress that comes from too many deadlines or conflict in a team. And then what they need is something else. Then it's not these shoulder rolls that they should do. Then it's not this that they should do. It's something very different.
I agree totally on this. It's a double-edged sword out there and difficult to navigate, but the dialogue needs to be started from both the sides, not just the employee, but the employer and vice versa. It's really, really required out there. Um, I was recently reading a newsletter by Puneet, and he is, branded as the Ayurveda guy. And it's just in continuation to one of the points that you mentioned about, the after lunch lethargy out there. I don't remember the exact context and the content of the email newsletter that he shared, but he mentioned that when after lunch we feel that lethargy, it's our body telling that I need rest.
Mm.
Now, instead of pushing not the body to keep working, if we take out 10-15 minutes, have that power nap or just close our eyes, we would be able to more productive and get better results out there and work better. I've myself tried it. So a lot of times, since I wake up early, as I shared with you, I take those 15-20 minutes or 30 minutes power nap between the day whenever I feel like, not every day, but whenever the body asks for it. And I have seen my body getting rejuvenated. I'm able to deliver faster. I'm able to think faster and get things done, much faster. Otherwise, a task which I would have done in 2 hours often gets completed in 10 minutes after that power nap.
Yes, exactly. And that's exactly right. I mean, if we're taking it back to the scientific level and how we were speaking about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, we have these. If we're thinking back to the times when we were hunters and gatherers, we would have that spark of sympathetic activity when we were hunting for food or trying not to be eaten, getting hunted. And after that, we have that rest and digest. I mean, the parasympathetic, the nervous system, is also called the rest and digest system for a reason. Because when we're eating food, you might notice that when you're stressed, you don't actually feel hungry because you're stressed. So all these other essential functions from your appetite, your appetite for food to your sexual appetite as well, all that goes away. You'll find yourself not having to go to the bathroom, but when you're suddenly when that stress subsides, you suddenly notice, oh, I'm hungry. Oh, I want to go to the bathroom. So all these other things kick in, and it's also there's certain anecdotes of robbers that just kind of fall asleep in the middle of the square after they're safe because because that stress is gone and they suddenly fall asleep. And that is what we have done back in the day as well. We then had our food, and that is when we need that parasympathetic nervous system to work. But what you're doing, if you're having your food and then immediately working again, you're going back into your sympathetic nervous system. So you're not allowing your body to metabolize the food in a way that it would normally metabolize that food, which can then lead to, obesity, for example, and all sorts of health issues down the line that you think have nothing to do with the actual calm, relaxed work, take a break, etc. But it does as well. Like we are so complex. So of course, everything that we do has to do with everything else in the body.
Yep, I agree. And I was just recently talking to another wellness expert, and they very specifically mentioned in today's time, 90% of people out there are having ailments because of lifestyle issues. If those lifestyle issues are bridged to a certain extent, most of the ailments that we suffer from or hear these days would not be even existing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we what I do right in my job is bringing the science to yoga. But actually, if I'm being really honest, we shouldn't need the science. We should just trust the process, right? We should just know these things are making us feel good, and we should just go back to what we used to do. Like I said earlier, we should go back to what we used to be as children. We should be more intuitive. We should listen more to all of what our body is telling us. Who can honestly say that they're always listening to what the body is saying? Even the ones that have these. So our interoception, for some people, it doesn't even exist anymore. This very, very important sense is not being listened to. And the less we listen to it, the more we get detached from what is going on in our body. So, do we still notice our breath? Do we still feel that we're hungry and thirsty? Are we able to just sit here and without touching our chest, are we able to feel our heartbeat? Are we able to feel that? Some people don't feel these things. And that is where meditation comes in again, getting us back into what is actually going on in the body so that we listen to the signs that our body, that we can actually listen again to the signs that our body is sending us and then make the right decisions. And Ayurvedic medicine talks a lot about crimes against wisdom. We know what is going on in our bodies. We know what our inner wisdom is. We choose to ignore it. We override it all the time. And funnily enough, we can do this. We can tell the body, no, wait now. I know you're hungry. I know you're stressed. I know you need to sleep. Just give me another 2 hours or just give me another 2 days. The body is very, very forgiving. The body is yes, is your body. It wants the best for you, right? So it's like, okay, fine. But if you've made that contract with the body and you then break it, because that was a promise that you made, just like you can make a promise to a child, but if that child is being left for longer than you've said, that's when it gets troublesome, right? And that's what we shouldn't do. So yeah, good decisions all around. And that means we have to listen to our interoception. We have to listen to our bodies. We have to make the right decisions, which doesn't mean that sometimes the Western world that we're in and that we are a part of can't come in because we need to adapt a little bit, of course, right? But we can't all go out and live like hunters and gatherers. We don't have that option anymore. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. One of the things I would like to understand, Basanti, is the relationship between meditation and memory, because that's a very major problem that's, finding, creeping its way in our lives, in this generation, where people as young as 25 or 20 are finding issues, witnessing problems where they're forgetting things. Their memory levels are reducing. So how can meditation play a role in that?
Yeah. So first off, I think that memory is a very complex thing, and one reason why we are forgetting things, or why even younger people are forgetting so much, is again our environment and the way we're asked to deliver all the time. You achieve a target, and immediately for next time that target is being set higher, right? It's not that you're being rewarded, or maybe you are, but also, well, you achieved that, so we're cranking it up a notch because you can achieve even more. And AI is coming in to do jobs for you, and that frees you up to do other things. But it's always, I compare what's happening with AI right now to what happened when Blackberries were first introduced. And it was like, oh, wow, great. And you're available all the time. And these Blackberries do such wonderful things for us. But they don't, because again, we're being asked to be more and more productive all the time, and you don't have a moment of respite anymore. There's no cognitive unloading going on anymore. So, and we need that. Our brain needs that. So, especially when it comes to young people, the reason for memory loss is stress related. And you could argue that dementia has to do with stress as well. So, and I always think if someone forgets something and they're in their 60s, people are already immediately saying, it's because you're getting old. When someone young is doing the same, we're not saying, you're getting old. It's because, you're stressed, you've got too much on. So it's all about reframing the narrative around it as well. But these things are very complex. Now, breath awareness is great for lowering stress and for cognitive training, because it engages different types of focus and attention. So it allows you to practice focusing. And I think it was Amishi Jha who talked about the flashlight and the floodlight. That essentially means, so your flashlight is, as you would think, it's your orienting your attention in the case of breath awareness to the breath. You're also noticing though, so that's your floodlight, everything around that, lighting up the big stadium. That's staying alert and monitoring for mind wandering. And then it's the redirecting. So that is your executive function, where you're redirecting, you're focusing back on a task, on the breath, and we can take it back to that. And that's those three different types of focus that we can use when we're using the breath, because it allows you to experience a sensation as well that's unfolding in real time. So this is a wonderful thing. I bring it back to these waves of the ocean. It's like observing waves of the ocean, but it's your ocean,
Yeah.
and that's essentially how it works. But what we need to realize is that memory is very much any kind of memory. Your long-term memory is also responsible, is also dependent on your immediate short-term memory, and that is your working memory, which functions like a whiteboard. So it's something that I'm saying, if you're not engaging, if you're too stressed to take it in, you will have heard the words, you will have had it in the moment, but then it's immediately wiped out. So we need to make sure that we're not stressed, so that our long-term memory also works. Our working memory first, then our long-term memory.
Wow. And can meditation really help us reverse the, memory loss issues due to severe, stress or burnout?
Yes, 100%, 100%, because these are things that stress doesn't have to be, of course, it can become chronic, and burnout also, but these are acute signs that the body is sending us, that it is under a lot of that it needs help. It needs to be taken out of that water, because otherwise it's going to drown. That is what we need to recognize. We can do so much. And if you're, for example, mindfulness is wonderful, because that starts with the breath, it starts with breath awareness. But then you're focusing on your body in a body scan, for example, taking through different parts of the body, so that you're staying with the body, and whether you're doing that. So I do body scans every night, just by myself. I'm not doing a guided body scan, but I do these guided meditations, guided mindfulness body scans as well. But whether you do it for yourself or you do it with guidance, you will find that your mind is wandering. And then what you do is take yourself back. And what the problem these days is that people don't recognize the mind wandering anymore. And after 5 minutes, they realize, oh, I wasn't actually paying attention to my body at all anymore. I was thinking of the next holiday, or I was ruminating about that conflict that I had with a coworker. And what we want to get better at is that meta awareness, that awareness of when the mind wanders and then taking it back. And that is what we're training. So if in a body scan that took 20 minutes or whatever, your mind has been wandering, or you notice that your mind wandered 20 times, good for you. Congratulate yourself, because that is what it is all about. You noticing. That is what it's all about. And then taking it back, because that enhances your memory, your focus, your attention. And then over time, this practice will make you calmer, will give you that calmness, not just in the moment, but over time. And that is what we're more interested in, right? It's not about just de-stressing you in the moment, because if you don't change the architecture of the brain, everything is just. But everything that you do in the moment, everything that you can do in the moment, all these breathing exercises, all your Anulom Vilom is also good over time, because it will eventually, everything that we do has an effect on the brain.
Understood. Understood. Um, I myself face a lot of these points in my journey where I have been reading a book and I would have gone through the whole 2, 3 pages and like, what did I actually read in those pages? And I would have to go back. And then I realized, okay, I was thinking something else. I was not paying attention. I was not really present in that moment. My thoughts were wandering here and there. And often happens when we are having discussions, watching any episode of our OTT. So meditation for me has really, to a certain extent, I'm really a long way yet to cover out there. But to a certain extent, it has brought me that focus back in my mind.
Mm.
It's enabling me every day a little, and I would really want other peoples to, go out and experience it. Um, Basanti is available, listeners. You can reach out to her. We will be sharing her contact details in the description when the episode is published. Or you can reach out to us in our DM as well, and we can connect you to somebody who's closer to you as well, near your place. But do experience it. And, yesterday also I was having a conversation again with a healthcare provider, and she's a doctor. She understands it's really important to work on the body, but again, we all keep giving ourselves excuses of time that we don't have time. It took me a lot of work to change that narrative within me. Um, it took a lot of lifestyle changes. It took a lot of work schedule changes. Now, I'm not sure how long I would be able to carry it forward, but yes, for last 2 years, I have been able to do things. It took me approximately nearly 2 years to do things step by step, step by step. I tried different things. I went out for walk. I wasn't able to stay consistent on that. I tried swimming, not able to go consistent on that. Sports not made for me. Every time I used to go and play sports, I used to injure myself and then have a very long break in between activities. So finally, I found myself comfortable with yoga. Now, in 2021, I was able to do yoga consistently for a year completely, and I left it because I started going back again to a different city for my business, and the travel time was 2 hours one side. So I
Mm.
was, you know, giving away my health for that travel time. I was giving that narrative that I don't have time, but I had to find time. So in January of 2024, I decided to close my office in that city and bring it back to my hometown. Now I work from home, and slowly and steadily since now January 25, initially focused on my diet plans. I changed my eating habits. I realized that eating late at night was giving me acid reflux. I was not having very good mornings. I was having constipation issues and a lot more. So I made my dinner time a little earlier. I now have my dinner by 5:30 or 6. And after that, realized over a period of time that 9 p.m. is my ideal sleeping time. So it took me a lot of effort, but yes, I was listening to my body. And it's not that I very, follow this particular schedule to the T. There are days when things move here and there.
Yeah.
But yes, every now and then it happens. I give my body that relaxation, that freedom. I go out, I party, I enjoy with my friends and do everything that anybody would do. But yes, I don't make that a norm for my body. Now I am slowly and steadily cutting out things which my body's not comfortable with, just for that 2 minutes or an hour of enjoyment. I'm not gonna be spoiling my whole life out there. That's narrative that's building inside me. So slowly and steadily it has happened. Now when it comes to yoga, I take us day at a time. I'm not committing myself that I'm gonna be doing yoga the whole 2025. I'm like, I did yoga today. Now I just need to get up tomorrow morning and do yoga again.
Mm.
So
Mm.
that's a narrative I've built within me, which is really helping me evolve one step at a time. And I believe if I can do it, anybody out there can do it. It's just that we need to be, cognizant of what we are saying to ourselves. We need to be really aware and change the narratives accordingly.
Yeah, and we need to be kind to ourselves. I don't know why we are so hard on ourselves all the time when we can be kind to other people. And I think that is a good point. Just because you did yoga today doesn't mean you have to do it tomorrow. And yoga, again, can be so many different things. If it doesn't involve the physical body, it can be just meditation. That's yoga too. It could be really just breath awareness. I start my morning with pranayama, but if I don't do it, that's fine as well. And we'll find that in over the period of a month, we'll most likely, without that pressure that we're putting on ourselves, achieve much more than if we put that pressure on us. And this should be something nice for you, You shouldn't be thinking, oh my God, I haven't done my meditation yet, and then sit there and do the meditation from that state. That's not the point. The point is to become meditative, to become a yogi, to be rather than to do. And the doing is just our gateway into it.
Yep. I totally, agree with you. Help me understand, Basanti, because due to stress and the nature of life we are living today, a lot of people find disconnect with happiness.
Mm.
They are always in a flight and fight mode. They're always stressed within families, at offices. The usual response is a reactive one.
Mm.
You don't, talk humbly. You're always in an angry mode. How can meditation really help you get reconnected with that happiness out there?
Well, I think our biggest problem is that we associate happiness with the things that we achieve. Again, it's about the being and the doing and that dichotomy between the two. I think we should spend much more time just being, with the caveat that we can't spend all our time in it because we have created a world that requires us to do. So that's fine. But within the doing, we always need to be aware of the fact that that is not the be all and end all. We actually need to be. That is the be all and end all. So we need to know that happiness comes from within and not from the things that we buy, the holidays that we go on, although holidays are different, that's experiences and they can replenish you and they can be wonderful. But it is we need to step away from the materialistic worldview that we have. And actually, in two ways, the materialist, the scientific materialist, but also materialistic, as in the material, the stuff we amass, that is not going to make us happy. Um, we, I feel that we numb ourselves to all the, to, to the, how to say, with all the things that we buy, we're numbing ourselves to the real thing that we can't have, and that is the happiness. And I think it's throughout evolution we've not been able to. So our lack of happiness came from our need for survival. So we're still here because we favored fear over happiness, and fear is what marketers work with, right? They will lead us to buy things because of fear, the fear of not getting a partner, the fear of not having enough. While most of us don't actually need to fight for survival anymore. Of course, some people do, but most of us don't. But it is that protection, survival, etc., and then comparison comes into it as well. But we are very much mistaken about what and how much we need, want, how much we will like something in the future. We'll work towards that car. Once we have it, we'll be happy with it for about a year, and then it's normal to us, right? And then
Yeah.
we go on like that again and again. And at some point, I would hope that after many years, even without meditation or any kind of work like that, you will realize, okay, I don't actually need this at all. I'm happy I've outgrown this. Some people get there, some people don't. Some people get there with meditation, others get there in other ways. But meditation helps us to step outside of our own experience. It helps us to see ourselves from a distance. Especially if it's a compassion-based meditation, it helps us to step into someone else's shoes as well. That is great in order to not compare, because we do seem to think the grass is always greener on the other side. And if you open your phone and you go onto any social media platform, it's a very curated version of someone else's life. Of course, the one that they want to present to the world. No one would, I mean, that's also something that people do. They rant on Instagram, or they cry on Instagram about how horrible their life is. But if you have this, but even that, you always just get a snapshot of what someone else's life is like. And of course, you'll then compare and you say, oh, they went on a holiday again. Oh, they had this, they had that. Meditation helps you to go back to what is really important and to also recognize that this is not what someone else's life is like. It helps you to see the truth of the moment rather than the narrative that people spin. And you were talking about narratives just now, and they can be helpful in reframing what you want your life to be like. But at the end of the day, we want to get rid of narratives completely. We want to get rid of our ego, our self, our identity, because it doesn't matter what we tell ourselves we are like, the job we have, the personality, what makes us different from other people, how other people define us. None of that is important. What we want to get back to is that we're all the same. So that is what meditation helps you achieve. It gets rid of all the things that you don't need. Physically in the brain, there is a part of the brain that houses your ego, and meditation helps you get rid of that. There is something, so if you've ever experienced this meditative state, which feels like you've taken drugs, so you're on a high, you could see a light, you could feel like you're floating, all these sorts of, you could have an out-of-body experience. That is essentially parts of your prefrontal cortex shutting down. You lose your sense of self, you lose your sense of time. All of this is housed in your brain. This is so fascinating. But that is gone, and this is why you have that experience. But what happens over time when you keep meditating is that this part of the brain gets less and less active, is less and less important because other parts of the brain are taking over. And that means that you can really get to a place after years, decades, where you do not have that identity anymore. You have shed your identity. I'm not there, you're not there, most people aren't there, but that is what I'm working towards. The fact that it isn't important what I wear, how much money I have. And, in many ways, I don't. Like, I am not money motivated, and I never have been. And I think I've been lucky enough to have been brought up in an environment with a father who was a yogi, even though he had a job, he was in this world. But that's very much what the Bhagavad Gita says as well. You don't have to be in the middle of nowhere. But he was someone who told me all the time, just be happy. That is all that matters. And I think that really had an effect on me because I always heard it. And yes, as a young person, you have all these ambitions, you have all these things that you want with your life. But for me, they were never motivated by money, status. Of course, there's still certain people that I wanted to please, that I wanted to prove something to, mostly myself. Um, but I want to get to a point where I don't ever need to prove anything to anyone. And sometimes I catch myself thinking, why did you just do that? Was that really important? But it gets less and less. And that's something that I want to do more of. And that is my meditation. That is my way of practicing yoga, while I also practice asana and pranayama. This is where I find that it gets very, very important in real life when I make these, when I catch myself doing something that doesn't actually align with my values and principles.
Um, I'd like to share a few things over here, and I totally echo with what you just said. 2017, 2018, I used to be a food blogger.
Oh.
being invited by a lot of restaurants in Gurgaon city. And it was not about relishing the food. It was all about just getting the best picture and uploading on Instagram. 2, 3 years into this, I started realizing that I was not, enjoying my food. And somewhere or the other, this particular thing happened when I started Anya Wellness, when I started realizing about mental health, natural healing. I started working in the field. Now, it could be a coincidence, or it could be because of the awareness I was getting. Now, today, I don't like taking those pictures. If somebody requests me, if you can help me put a review because I have that level 13 and all those profiles with me, just to support somebody, I take those pictures. But now I don't feel like taking so many pictures. I want to be in that moment. I want to be enjoying that moment with myself. And it has really, somewhere or the other helped me evolve. Coming out of those metrics, vanity metrics on the social media, recently there was an incident where an influencer on Instagram committed suicide because she was not getting the required number of likes, which would have given her that happiness.
Yeah.
I'm really, I can relate to what she would have gone through because somewhere or the other, those metrics really matter to me as well. But over a period of time, I was able to evolve.
Mm.
But if I talk about today's generation, a lot of kids out there, the youth, is running after getting those likes. Yesterday, I was just driving down, from one meeting to another. On the side of the road, I saw a girl making a video to be put on Instagram.
Mm.
Now, the life is beyond that. It's not just restricted in that particular 6 inch of your mobile screen. I'm not sure how or when people are going to realize that. And somewhere or the other, I believe a lot of pressure also comes from the society to be successful, to be fitting into those set standards of success by the society. Somewhere or the
Yeah.
other, society also needs to evolve that in 2025, the standards that were set a decade back or half a decade back are not relevant anymore. They have
Mm.
changed.
Mm. I think also, we talked earlier about office environments and employers and the responsibility of employees. I think it's the same with societies as well. We often, when people say like, "Oh, what will people think?" Who are these people? That we're all individuals. And I sometimes think, yes, there is culture, there is society, but there is also each and every individual who can help shape society and culture. And I think there is massive shifts happening already, and I'm really grateful about that. But that also means that there is that like two tectonic plates going away from each other, and those that feel the way that we used to, those that, for example, talk about, oh, stress doesn't exist. When someone says they're anxious about going into a room full of stranger, what are they talking about? Not understanding the different types of stress, what that can do to your body, how stress can be good, how it can be bad, and have this sort of very let's say traditional view of what people should do and what their responsibilities are in a work environment or in society, and then that very kind of much more open-minded way that we are now talking about, or that many people are now talking about, what can we do to be happy, and realizing that there is you know, actual dangers in the way that we have changed society, or that society has changed through social media, for example. Like you said, yes, that is a thing. And especially if someone is very young, we know that our brains aren't fully formed until we're 25 to 30 years old. And that in that time, we're much more malleable, we're much more responsive to what people say about us. Peer pressure is much more of an issue. I mean, I was last year, I had a social media person help me with a few reels and to sort of guide me on my journey. And I realized I wasn't really being myself in these, because when you edit something together from 5 minutes of a video to 30 seconds or one minute, there's not much nuance, and everyone is nuanced. And I'm not like, oh my God, terrible. I'm also like this and like that. And the video became something else. And what I wanted to say actually is that so I'm in my 40s, and I didn't know how I would react to lots of the hate that came on Instagram, wonderful comments, but with the wonderful comments come really rubbish comments as well.
Yeah.
So something about everything, my accent, my looks, my all sorts of things. And I read some of them and I thought, I don't mind that at all. And that was surprising to me that I did not care because I thought not everyone would care, but I just kind of assumed that that wouldn't something that just would brush off me, but it did. And I think for me it does because maybe because of all the meditation yoga that I've done ever since I was 4 years old and meditation for the last 15 years or so. Um, Maybe it's just a sign of getting older and shedding these things. Maybe it's a sign of the brain is fully formed and knows what's important and what isn't. But many people, and it isn't necessarily an age thing, many people are not like that, but especially younger generations, it is so important to know what it is that you are, what really matters in life, and socials doesn't matter. And I'm not saying they are the culprit, just like you can't say the internet is bad. It's not like that, right? It's how you use it. But the fact of the matter is that through social media, your community has evolved from what is natural for our bodies as well, from 10 to 100 max or 120. Is it 120 max? But there is an upper limit, but your community is not the whole world. And yet everyone then has to say something. You are opening yourself up to everyone out there giving comments on your life. And that is not natural. It is not what the body is made for. And that is a big, big problem. So, yeah, we have to remember what the body is and how it functions and how we have all these happy hormones and positive neurotransmitters that that come in when we and that is the problem with social media as well. It has used the way that the body works to its advantage with all the likes that you get, sparking all of this, giving you that dopamine hit and all that. So we need to be aware of it, and then we need to be able to take ourselves out of it when it's no longer healthy for us.
I totally agree. I believe, the youth really understands the life beyond vanity metrics. And anybody out there finding it difficult to, vent out their thoughts or anything that's bothering them, they can reach out to us. We have got an anonymous mental health forum called We Are Listening, the name of the episode itself, the podcast itself. The link would be available in the description. Go onto that platform, vent out anonymously. Nobody's judging you. But yes, we are lending you an ear that's listening to support you, to help you out there. Please reach out, and God forbid you have to take any, action which is life threatening. So my heart goes out to all the influencers out there who are really, working hard and struggling hard to get those vanity metrics. But please understand that life is much beyond that. And happiness is much beyond those numbers. Happiness is within you. Basanti, any final thoughts before we conclude our conversation today?
Yeah, gratitude really helps. I haven't touched on that at all. So I think when we're trying to be happy, we should remind ourselves of all the things that we are grateful for. And we all have things that we can be grateful for, even in the darkest of moments. So if you practice gratitude, you replay your happy memories. You visualize them. You will rewire your brain into seeing the positive things rather than the stuff that doesn't help you. So if you practice gratitude, you can't be envious at the same time. If you practice gratitude, if you're happy, you can't be sad at the same time. So shift yourself from one state of being, from one vibration to another one. Energetically, it really does work.
Amazing. Amazing. Listeners, as Basanti beautifully illustrated, meditation isn't just a tool to fix something broken. It's a pathway to rediscover our natural state of creativity, clarity, and contentment. Whether you're struggling with stress, memory lapses, or simply seeking that lost spark of happiness, the answer may not be outside, but within you. Thank you, Basanti, for guiding us and sharing your pulse of wisdom. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.